Hello and welcome back to a new Mark and Smark Connection podcast. I am your host, Jesse Disbro. With me here is the Mark, Matt Cooper.
Hello, everybody.
I being the Smark of the Mark and Smark Connection. We are trying to connect the dots between everything that happened in the last week, from Monday to Friday worth of wrestling, including
Well,
Sunday this week.
yeah, that includes the Sunday of Hell in a Cell.
Yep.
We mentioned this last show that a lot of stuff happened, but this week a lot of stuff happened too.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I mean, it just keeps getting busier and busier and busier in the in the wrestling segment. There's wrestling basically every day, and there's programs about wrestling at least every day, and
boy,
that's
if we're
not
if we're gonna,
including like our podcast. You got to fit that in on Saturdays. There's nothing on Saturdays, so you get our podcast then.
yeah, man, if we're gonna fit under our like 45-hour long time limit, we're gonna have to start being selective about what
Yes.
we cover.
Yes. So with that
Which,
in mind, we've kind of changed how the format is going to be. Now we used to do the Matt recap where we talked about what happened on Raw and SmackDown, and Matt tried to pick out what was the most important thing, and most often failed miserably. Um,
the
so
way the 24/7 title seems very important to me.
yes, well, I mean, you sometimes you sometimes made up things, and then you sometimes had things. They just weren't the right things that were the biggest thing. But instead, we're gonna kind of single out one moment that made our mark out from the wrestling week, out of everything that happened, and that's gonna be our segment there. We're going to kind of condense the recap into kind of like a Smark recap. So here's everything that's important that just happened. Bop, bop, bop,
Yeah,
bop, bop. And then we're going to hit the.
Ex- excluding like Baron Corbin versus Chad Gable part 500.
Yeah, no,
Or
it's not worth it at this point.
yeah,
And we're going to hit the meat and potatoes of the segment of the podcast too. Which this week is going to be talking about the draft, not the people who were drafted this way or that. We might have a special podcast or a special Smarks remarks following the draft, kind of analyzing where people went and how that all shook out. But we're not going to talk about any of that. Instead, we're going to talk about what the draft is, how it was, and the return of stables in professional wrestling,
oh
which
yeah,
was
and
in
we're
in
also
the
gonna make room to gripe about Hell in a Cell
yeah, a little bit.
a little bit.
Because it's
Yeah,
been played heavy. We want to get our thoughts in on it at least.
yeah. We're a week away from it. Everybody's kind of blown their load
Mhm.
on griping about. Well, it's kind of a loaded term. Everybody's kind of exhausted themselves already complaining about Hell in a Cell, so we'll only
Well,
bitch about it a little bit.
it's not a loaded term if they've blown it.
I get it. I wanted to include wrestling fans of all stripes who blow loads or don't blow loads. Yeah, never mind.
Yes,
We're
it's
gonna
I
we're
get
gonna
where you're
lose our
going from.
TV PG rating with
I
this
know,
conversation.
seriously. Come on now. Anyway, so we're gonna head right into the new segment. Here it is.
So marking out, I, the mark, look at what happened during the week, and I try to choose something that made me mark out. It can't be too smarky, it can't be too behind the scenesy. It's just something that made me, the wrestling fan, go, ah. So this week, the thing that made me mark out, the thing that made me go, ooh, that's neat, new and refreshing, is Bailey went heel. She cut her hair, dyed it darker, and came out and fucked up her Bailey buddies. She like cut those motherfuckers down or some shit. And there's videos of children crying at this on Twitter and everything. I
Yeah,
was like, whoa.
seriously. I mean, that's not TV PG if you're gonna make children cry, right?
Yeah, TV cry, meh.
TV
But no,
cry,
I,
CRY.
I thought that they were gonna keep her as some kind of like twisted I'm a good guy heel, the one that thinks she's doing good but is actually a bad person. I didn't think they'd pull the trigger on making her a straight up asshole.
I think
So
it's just easier that way. It's easier to portray. It's a very nuanced character to do it the other way, and we might still see some of that nuance. But I think at this point, when she said "screw you" to everybody, she's just like, "Yeah, no, I'm doing me now. I'm done hugging people. I'm done with the Bailey buddies and being positive and shit. I'm just gonna do me." And it means that she's now the women's SmackDown Women's Champion.
I guess she came out. She defeated Alexa Bliss, I guess.
No, Charlotte. who was in
Charlotte.
her
Oh,
10th reign,
sorry.
which lasted less than a week.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
Okay, great. I mean, well, it's the right move. I don't like titles changing hands that quickly, but Charlotte's had it a million times. Put it on Becky, not Becky. Put it on Bailey. It'll be more interesting
Yeah.
to have some asshole running around with the title. So,
Of course, all the Smarky folk were making jokes about her ring attire, which was all gold and black. It's like, oh yeah, she's gonna go join Undisputed Era, or like, oh yeah, gold and black. All right, Bailey to AEW confirmed.
oh, give me
And
a break.
yeah, people were just messing around. They were
Of
joking,
course.
but it was funny to see that mixed in with there too. You know, the fact that she was less of a goody two shoes made her a little more attractive to some of the male populace I saw on Twitter as well.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah,
He likes
uh,
a bad girl, I guess.
I guess so. People do just. I guess it works both ways, you know.
You know, I've heard people say that Bailey does a good heel. I've never seen Bailey as a heel. I mean, evidently she had a heel run in NXT, but
Yeah, no, she was basically hug life forever. I
yeah,
think like a lot of this like people just want to see when they see something and it starts to get stale. They kind of want to see what it could be if it was something different.
by different, do you mean like the polar opposite,
Yeah,
or
pretty much. It was nice to have Daniel Bryan back as a heel for a bit. It was a nice change of pace, and I think we will appreciate him now that he's much more of a face. We'll
yeah?
appreciate his facedom a little bit more, I think, because
Man,
of
what are
that.
they gonna do with Bray Wyatt, who's currently kind of at the opposite end of those spectrums already, in
Yeah,
just one
well,
character?
Bray Wyatt is going to. Well, we'll find out because he's going to move to the broadcast network as part of the draft.
Well, yeah, we'll
Um,
talk about that later with the draft.
yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit. We'll touch that quickly during the draft. But we might reach out about that a little bit in a future podcast.
Yeah,
Um,
and other than that, that was the markiest I got all week, seeing that Bailey turned heel. I
no,
didn't really
that's
see anything to mark out about on Raw or anything like that. It was
no,
just Bailey turning heel.
it's a good point. I mean, it was interesting. It was an interesting week. It was a lot of like flash and not as much substance. Like things that like actually happened. They continued the Lana Rusev Bobby Lashley triangle, and
Mm.
that continued. Theoretically, they ended the Natalia Lacey Evans feud
Oh
with
yeah, they
Natalia
they
winning.
threw Natalia onto that half pipe ramp and she
Yep,
came sliding down it.
she eventually was the last woman standing, so that was nice.
Okay.
Um, and I mean, the really that was it that happened from Raw. There was a little bit more Tyson Fury business that happened. What came out of Raw basically was that they announced for Crown Jewel we're going to get not Baron, Braun Strowman versus Tyson Fury, and we're going to get Cain Velasquez versus Brock Lesnar in a non-title match.
Yeah, I care not about any of those matchups.
Nah, I don't think
I
many people do.
Yeah, no, I have zero interest in Kane Velas. Okay, let me rephrase
Velasquez,
that. I have
Velasquez, whoever,
no,
however you want to say it, because the
no, no,
announce
no.
team said it
Tyson
both.
Fury is who I
Oh,
meant to say. I have absolutely zero interest in Tyson Fury, like subterranean interest.
Tyson
Kane
Fury was actually.
Velasquez.
Well, I was gonna say Tyson Fury was actually a little bit interesting because we found out that Tyson Fury has been working at the Performance Center, training
Okay,
to wrestle for the last couple of weeks.
okay, so he's not coming in there like completely cold.
No, he's not gonna be like Lawrence Taylor or um, what's his face, the other boxer, Mayweather.
To
Who
Floyd Mayweather, who got
yeah
to come in and punch Big Show in the face.
Yeah, who won't be, they're not really wrestlers. They don't do much in terms of wrestling moves. It looks like Tyson Fury will actually have some wrestling repertoire available when
Okay.
he has his match.
I mean that's okay, but and I don't begrudge celebrity appearances. They've long been a staple of the WWF and the WWE in particular. I mean, the first WrestleMania had what, like Cyndi Lauper
Hmm.
and a bunch of
Oh
other
yeah, no,
celebrities.
it's always been a big
Yeah, Mr. T
star-driven.
was there as well.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I don't mind that, but I don't want them to be involved in like I don't want to be there too long. And generally, when they show up, I'm like, yeah, yeah, okay. And I only care if I care about the celebrity, and I don't care about Tyson Fury. Cain Velasquez looks like he's going to be around for longer, so I'm going to give him a bigger benefit of the doubt. But
Yeah, I mean
yeah,
they announced that he has retired from MMA and is now going to wrestle full time, and I believe
yeah.
that came with a contract to the
And,
WWE.
and I think the last celebrity we had that stuck around for a while was Ronda Rousey. Um, but that
Yeah,
was
I mean she was committed to
selfish.
to wrestle,
Oh
and
yeah,
then the fans kind of turned on her, and she was not excited about that, and I think she needed some time away to kind of sort her priorities. But
I
it might be one of the. It's one. I think it'll be one of those things where when she does come back, there'll be a big pop and people will be excited for her again.
okay, cool. Yeah, no, that's part of being a wrestler. You gotta know how to roll with the punches when the crowd decides they don't like you anymore.
Yeah.
That's a hard thing to learn, I imagine, especially on such a big stage. You know.
So continuing the recap, I think the biggest thing out of NXT was that Leo Rush beat Drew Gulak to become the new NXT Cruiserweight Champion.
So that's where the cruiserweights went.
They actually did have 205 Live on the network this week as well.
Okay.
So they'll still have their own show, but it's now in NXT brand essentially.
Okay.
So a 205, the cruiserweight division is pretty much a division of NXT at this point.
I think that they'll be better served there if they're not dissolved and absorbed into the roster.
Yeah, I think so. I think people will reach will be better accepting of them there, and the smaller format show might be better there. Also, Leo Rush just comes back and takes the title. Drew Gulak was on the list of people who were available to be drafted and didn't get drafted. I'll talk about that stipulation when we get to talk about the draft later.
Okay.
Otherwise, there's just a bunch of stuff setting up for other stuff.
Yeah, I imagine you're getting ready for Crown Jewel, which I'll go on the record again and say I care not at all
well,
about.
NXT probably isn't gonna have any. They might not. I'm not sure if they'll have anybody compete at Crown Jewel.
I doubt it.
Yeah, unless they have a giant monster battle royale again. Um,
So, what do they have going on AEW? I heard there's a new stable there now.
yeah, but we'll talk about that a little bit later because that was kind of
Okay.
the biggest thing that came out of that. AEW was a great show again. There was no big like championship matches or anything. They started their tournament for the tag team championships this week,
That sounds
and
good.
actually the Young Bucks lost to Private
Really?
Party. Yep, yeah, they went ahead and put over a young and exciting flippy team.
Wait a
So that
minute.
was
The Young
nice.
Bucks are not young.
They are. That's more or
I was gonna say
less. I
this
think
is
at this point, Private Party is the younger of the
okay.
teams there.
Uh-huh.
But yeah,
So they're the youngish Bucks.
yes, they're younger than Cody, older
Okay.
than most of the newest wrestlers now.
Makes sense. Although
Um,
next thing you're gonna tell me they're not like male deer,
no,
which would make it completely false
no, they don't
advertising.
wear horns or anything when they come to the ring.
Really?
Nope,
They don't prance into Bambi's music?
nope, no, no,
Bullshit.
no. Drip, drip, drop, little
My
April showers. No, it's
the
not happening.
idea I had in my head of the Young Bucks is now completely ruined.
Ruined
So
forever.
yes.
So yeah, that was that. It wasn't anything like earth shattering. A lot of stuff just carried over from last week. Some really good matches this week. And some more build towards feuds there. Nothing like big title change or anything like that. I think the Bucks losing that first round match is probably the biggest thing that happened on
Okay.
AEW. And SmackDown was mostly draft. It was mostly draft content, and then the big thing that you marked out for at the end,
Yeah.
where Bailey won and got the title.
Did you see that video somebody posted of replacing the SmackDown theme with the theme from All That?
I did see that. It was very
That
funny.
that fit a little too perfectly.
Yeah.
And as you observed, I think on our Twitter account, which you can find at Mark and Smark,
Mhm.
you can't watch SmackDown now without hearing "Whoa, oh, this is all that."
I mean
Yeah.
the AC/DC song that's over top of it. I think it's AC/DC. It's at least the lead singer um doing the song. That's the theme for SmackDown right now. That's pretty cool. It's pretty badass, but it's our childhood sensibilities are being tested when you put
I
all that in front of anything.
yeah. And I had a friend of mine send me Xavier Woods tweeting about it. Xavier Woods thought it was great too, because I guess Xavier Woods and I and you are all from the same generation.
Yeah, pretty much. Different we went different roads. Some of us got our PhD and then became professional wrestlers.
Yeah. Or some of us didn't do any of those things. Like,
Correct.
but we have a podcast.
Yes, he has a very successful YouTube channel.
Yeah, well, you got a YouTube channel too.
I have a YouTube channel that is
Oh,
graciously hosting our show right now.
okay.
I do need to create a Mark and Smark YouTube channel. Instead of having it on the production channel it was on our Connections production channel for a while. It's on my production channel right now. We're going to give it its own dedicated
Yeah.
channel in the near future.
And I'm not putting it on my production channel.
No, because yours doesn't exist.
But no, what are you talking about? I have a production.
You have a Namtechthropic Productions.
No. It's called Dead Wrestlers Incorporated. Okay, no.
Got him. All right, so yeah, so that's basically everything. That's the recap for you for this week. I'm gonna touch on the other show that debuted later when we do the hot take.
Okay, dokie.
Uh,
So, draft.
yeah, the draft. I love the draft.
You were very pleased with this,
So
right?
Fox did a great job. So they basically built the draft like the NFL draft, which is the most popular draft out of all the sports leagues.
Yeah, nobody really watches the MLB draft or the
No, it is both
draft.
the NBA draft and the MLB draft are both televised. MLB only does the first couple rounds. They still do like 6 or 7 rounds of draft for the MLB. It's still a lot longer than it. They used to have like 30 rounds of draft for the MLB. They still do a lot. I think they still do like 15 rounds of draft or something like that. Anyway, they only show the first day or two, and it's only started to pick up some steam. And really, the draft lottery is the bigger thing for the NBA when they pick the numbers out of the big thing and
Okay.
figure out who's gonna get the first pick for
Yeah, I
the
saw
NBA
that
draft.
Fox during the draft had some pretty cool graphics. They had like a camera inside the USA offices.
Yes, they did. They had so both networks were the people who were drafting this year.
Okay, that's
So
interesting.
instead of like the commissioner for SmackDown and the commissioner for Raw, no, Fox was drafting for SmackDown and USA was drafting for Raw.
That makes a little bit more sense. It's a
Hmm.
little bit more believable
Yeah,
because it's not a commissioner that's under control of the WWE. You don't really feel like they actually have an interest in drafting particular wrestlers,
right.
but
Yeah,
the
no,
networks
the
themselves.
networks are like, oh, I got to get this guy because he's gonna draw, and I got to get this guy because he's a huge talent and will be a big part of our show for years to come.
Now, that's a good wrinkle. I
It
think that
is.
that would make it like a quarter more interesting almost.
Yeah, and they did a great job showing that off too. So they ended up Fox has gone whole hog on this on SmackDown on WWE. Like they threw all of their assets at that. We had the war rooms, which is what you mentioned. So they had the USA war room, and the war room is what the draft all the people getting together to do the drafts is called, by the way.
Okay.
Um, they had both networks' war rooms in there, including the Fox robot that's on the part of the NFL coverage
Yeah, I
was in
saw
there.
that little robot in the background. I was like, really? They got the little robot there.
Yeah, he's not actually little;
Nice.
he's like 7 foot tall. But
Well, it's okay. They got the. He's not the Toonami robot. You're right.
right.
Okay.
Yeah, but so they did that. They also had their top baseball commentary team, or their top football commentary team, their football analysis show, their Saturday college football analysis show, and their NFL Insider all give analysis of the WWE and potential draft picks, who they would draft from across the entire history of the end of the WWE, all sorts of cool stuff. So they
Yeah,
went
this
whole
is
hog
this
on this.
is this is like wide scale mainstream legitimacy for wrestling that I don't think I've ever seen before.
No, and
That's
that's what a lot of people were jumping at. They were really excited about it. Fox has brought a bunch of new camera angles, a new style to presenting it that feels a little closer to what they do with football, what they do with other live sports. which is wide cam, hero cam, that kind of production.
Yeah.
So it felt big. It felt impressive. It felt legitimate.
And that's good because, I mean, we watch wrestling and we all know it's a show, right? We all
Hmm.
know it's a work, but
Right.
it is sports entertainment. And there have been moments in recent years where it seems like the sports part of that has been like shoved into the back seat or faded away or whatever. And it's an important element.
And it's one of
And
the reasons why AEW was starting to get a lot of traction because they were like, all the wins and losses are going to count. This is going to be, we're gonna focus more on the sport aspect of it. And so far, it's a little questionable whether or not wins or losses count in AEW yet. I don't really care at this point because they're just trying to set up everything.
mm,
But the with Fox jumping in, trying to give some more legitimacy, it kind of takes a little bit of pull away from what AEW was trying to get there by having them being owned by an NFL owner, and getting that sort of legitimacy. AEW is owned by the guy who owns the Jacksonville Jaguars, or at least the family that owns the
okay.
Jacksonville Jaguars.
This I know.
Yep.
Okay. So, um, I guess we're gonna talk about the conclusion of the draft on another show.
Yeah, I just want to hit a couple points besides that. Like, so that was all the really the nice part, the nice stuff. Especially the fact that they had Raw's Seth Rollins versus SmackDown's Roman Reigns for the number one draft pick. I thought that was awesome. I think that's a great choice. They're gonna have Becky Lynch take on, um, I believe it's Charlotte for the first pick
Okay.
on
That's a
Raw.
that's a
No,
that's
no.
a good.
Sasha Banks. Excuse me. Becky Lynch versus
Okay.
Sasha Banks. Sasha was drafted to. Becky was drafted number one overall first pick to Raw, and Sasha was later drafted to SmackDown. So they're gonna fight each other for the number one pick on Raw. The next
So
for the
meaning
next season.
Becky wins, then Raw gets the.
Correct. They
Okay.
get to pick first.
That's a fun, easy, and sensible way to book a match between two big names and to have it mean something. So
Exactly, and it worked out.
yeah.
It worked out pretty well with Raw. I mean, with the SmackDown. The Fiend showed up and attacked Seth Rollins again, which kind of was. It ended up causing the match to be a disqualification, which kind of jabbed a bunch of people again in their open wounds.
Yeah.
Um, but it was still a good match that was going on, and we all popped for the Fiend, so it worked out in the end, I guess. I They had clear rules. They're similar to the last draft, where since Raw is a 3-hour show, and SmackDown is a 2-hour show, they get picks in a ratio of 3-2. So Raw
Okay.
gets 3 in each round, in each session, I guess, and SmackDown gets 2 in each session. What I didn't like was there was the possibility that they had kind of leaked the list in their own official website post, where they just had all the eligible people in the pool listed. And it turns out that they were picking them in that order. So
Uh-oh.
I think they pulled an audible because it was originally in the pool. They had actually had like stables and tag teams like together.
Hmm.
So the one of the top picks was the OC. So that was both Gallows and Anderson and AJ Styles, the U.S. Champion.
Does the
So
title migrate with the wrestlers who
yes,
are drafted, or
correct. The
okay?
titles move with the wrestlers who were drafted, which left for some weirdness if Raw drafted the SmackDown Women's Champion, for instance.
Yeah, I
Um,
see what you mean.
but that basically means that the U.S. title and the Intercontinental title are the ones that will switch, and I think we're gonna see the big champion switch. That was one of my issues, though, was that this was supposed to be the first round, and neither of the male champions were even in the pool for drafting this on Friday.
Interesting. So Seth Rollins wasn't there, and neither was Brock
Brock
Lesnar.
Lesnar. No, both of them were on the show. They just weren't available to be drafted. They were set to a separate pool for Raw to be
Yeah, I mean
drafted.
it would make sense because they're the champions, right?
To get them in the first round, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I guess they wanted to save something for Raw, so they saved the top male superstars
It
for
makes sense, and to be honest, if you compared
Raw.
Seth Rollins, Brock Lesnar, and Becky Lynch,
Hmm.
and you had to choose which one was more over.
Yeah, I mean Becky Lynch
So
was the most over, and she was
yeah.
the number one pick, so that made a lot of sense. It was good. It was the right choice. And it felt weird in the moment not
Mm,
having some other people picked before the champions, before the
mm.
the top champions of each brand. It felt
Yeah, I see
almost
what you're
like they
saying.
were devaluing the championships. I found out a little bit later that they were not in that first pool, which it works as it is. I'm still not 100% on that, but whatever. The other
Okay.
thing is, just like in the NFL draft, if you are not drafted, you then become a free agent, and you can sign with either brand or with the brand of their choosing is how it was worded.
Okay,
So
so they get to. It's not that. Mm, so they get to decide where to go. It's not that they can select accept an offer from whomever gives it to them.
yeah, yeah, they can do that. They can go to Raw or SmackDown depending on who wants them.
The
Or
way
maybe they migrate to NXT because that's the only one who wants to give them an offer or something like that.
the way I see this working, and this will irritate you,
Hmm.
but I see that the people who are selected in the draft, they're like the sort of top talent or whatever.
Oh yeah,
They get stuck on whatever show they're on. But I can imagine like a Matt Hardy just sort of drifting onto whatever show.
yeah, and
Like
he said, "Oh well, I guess by the rules of the draft, since I wasn't even in the pool, I get to choose whatever show I want to be on."
yeah, but I don't mean like he selects Raw and then he's on Raw forever. I mean like one week he's on Raw, then the next week he's
No,
on
no, no.
SmackDown.
They're not gonna be free agents like the wild card era rule free agents,
Well,
like John Cena, who was declared a free agent and could wrestle anywhere. No, they're going to sign a contract with, quote unquote, sign a contract with one show or another. They just get to choose afterwards.
so they'll be in their place, they'll be where they belong, and we can have reasonable expectations of who we might see on a show.
Yes, that's the
Okay.
theory. These people, however, these we might not ever hear about half of these wrestlers, and they might end up wild carding. Even though they said the wild card is dead, they might end up being like living on the fringes. We might even see some of them get released from their contracts or something like that and pop from one place to another. We saw that with Jack Swagger. Before he left the WWE, he actually they noted that his contract with Raw was up, so then he said in a interview that he was going to sign with SmackDown, and he had like a 3 week run with SmackDown before he was released.
Okay.
So I don't know. I think it's a great idea. I'm not sure they have put enough thought into it where it's going to work out well, but we'll see. So
I
that's
mean,
yeah.
you're gonna need to like you're gonna need to. I hate to use this phrase, but you're gonna need to cull the herd a little bit. I think there's too many wrestlers on the roster.
I think
So
that finding some of the like having some of those people like when they did the last draft, they had this great storyline with Heath Slater. So
mhm.
there was all the superstars were in one room waiting to get drafted, and they were all hanging out in their chairs. They were like, "Ah, cool, yeah, all right, I'm going to Raw, yeah." And people on the NXT roster were having their dreams come true, like Apollo Crews getting called up to the main roster. Yeah, that worked out well.
Mhm.
And then all the draft picks, and it was like, "All right, that's the final draft pick for the WWE draft." And it cuts to the room, and there's Heath Slater sitting there by himself. And he's like, "Man, what the hell?" And then
And
they
he's
turn the
got
lights
kids
off on
too.
him. Yeah, though that's where the whole "I have kids" came from. Was that angle? Because
Really?
he was like, I need this job. I need to have a contract with Raw or SmackDown. I need this job. I got kids. So they were like, okay, go in there and wrestle Brock Lesnar. Uh,
Of course.
okay. And then he came back and he was like, listen, I came back here with one of my former, I came back here with one of my former, like I came back here with Rhino. And he's like, we both of us deserve jobs, and they were like, yes, right now you'll have a match. And Rhino then pinned Heath Slater for the opportunity,
Of
and that's how
course.
they also brought Jinder Mahal back the same way. So they had
Yeah,
it.
I recall all this. Okay.
It was
I-
that was one of the best storylines that they've done in the last several years,
Hmm.
And they have the opportunity to do that with these free agents as well. Kind of showing some if they're willing to be like Heath Slater, where they're willing to kind of acknowledge that they're not, world champions, that they are the towards the bottom of the roster. If they're willing to do that, they can do somewhat like a Heath Slater like story where he's trying to get signed by one of the others, and maybe the only offer he gets is NXT, and he gets to kind of try to rebuild some of his status in NXT, or they doesn't get signed by anyone and he becomes a referee or something like that. There's a lot of cool stories that could be told out of this, and I'm not sure if they'll be able to get them all in. That's just like kind of my pick,
We're gonna have
my
to wait and
pickiness with
see, I
that.
guess, for
Yep.
the rest of the draft on Raw.
And one last thing before we move on to the world of AEW is officially Chad Gable is Shorty Gable.
It's my opinion of it.
Yeah, a lot of people are like, this is dumb, this is stupid, and then some people are like, well, I mean, whatever gets you over.
I might be proven wrong. This might be one of those stupid things that people decide they like later.
Hmm.
But for now,
Yeah, I think that's what most people's thoughts are on the thing. It makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, he cut his hair short and he's wearing shorts instead of the singlet now. Shorty
okay,
Gable,
Vince, I get
perfect.
it. Yeah.
So, yeah, we'll see how that goes. I think Chad Gable was actually on the list for the pool for SmackDown and wasn't drafted. So he theoretically is a free agent too. Um, we might find out that everyone in the pool for Friday who didn't get drafted ended up getting put back into the pool on Monday. Who knows? They might retcon it then. Theoretically, there's a specific secondary pool for um, Monday. There's 70 total people in the pool,
God
and
damn.
yeah, 70 total available superstars between Raw and SmackDown. Um, so I think there was like 10 who didn't get picked in the draft. I think they did like 4 rounds of 5 or something like that in total.
Okay.
So there was only like 10 who didn't get picked this time, and they'll do like 6 rounds of 5 next time, and there'll be a certain amount that don't get picked and all get becomes free agents.
Yeah,
So
Jesus Christ, 70 wrestlers.
yeah, 70, and that's not just wrestlers. That's teams included in that too. So like the OC was one of 70. Well, it was one of 70 in there, I believe. I didn't actually count to see if there was 30 items on their list. I think there was because I did count. I just wasn't counting to see if there was 30. Um 5 times 6 is 30, right?
Don't ask me. I
It's
had to take
true. That
college
is
algebra
that
twice.
that is actually the numbers, and there was. I looked it up, and out of the first pool, there were potentially 6 rounds of 5 picks each. So there were 30 line items in there. So those 30 line items included like the Street Profits, included the OC.
Yeah, no,
So
I get it.
there's probably at least 100 people who are currently on the WWE roster. That did
God,
also include like 5 or 6 people from 205 Live on Friday night.
if you sat me down and aimed a gun at my head and said name at least 75% of the wrestlers, like the
You
100
couldn't.
wrestlers,
They don't
no,
feature 75% of the wrestlers on the show.
you
They
know, and
feature
for the
about
record,
15% of the wrestlers on the show.
yeah, and for the record, a lot of those wrestlers they do house matches, they do dark matches,
They do
they
main
go out and meet
event.
people at Walmart.
Yeah.
They're not sitting on their ass for the most part.
Right.
So
They're all earning a paycheck. They're all there working. Some of them, I guess Tyler Breeze is working double duty now as both NXT and somewhere else. I said
double
duty,
duty.
huh?
Yeah, you
So
said the word duty. I'm sorry.
yeah, so that's
That
that.
this has been the sports aspect of sports entertainment is important, but all of that was like a lot of sports aspect of it. I started to feel like I was discussing baseball statistics at some point. I was like, oh no, it's too
Yeah,
much.
it's too much for the Mark, but for the Smark like me, who will fantasy book something, I was eating it all up.
Oh, I bet you were in hog
For
heaven.
someone who
Oh,
has fantasy booked a draft before, and loves going through the entrance to the Royal Rumble, trying to figure out who might be the surprises. That was something that I really enjoyed, and it was weird. Like one of the things that I didn't like was that not everyone was eligible. So it made trying to figure out who was getting drafted harder. So I ended up just sitting there, like, just all right, it's draft. Who's going? Okay, great. They're going there. They're going there. They're going there.
So
So
it made you watch.
I mean, I ended up watching. I didn't know I was watching. I actually ran out and got pizza during the event. But I was just like, all right, well, they'll just tell me who all is going to get drafted by the end of the night. So that's cool.
What kind of pizza did you get?
I got like a flat kind of like a flatbread pizza, which was Philly steak and peppers, green peppers.
I, I
Um,
was I was fixing to say, aren't all pizzas flat generally?
no, no, this is like flat bread, kind of like the
Oh,
crispy,
flatbread.
like the
Okay.
crispy crust,
Oh
like the
yeah,
flat
we
crispy
call that
crust.
thin crust around here, I
Yeah,
think.
thin
Yeah.
crusted, thin
Okay.
crispy crust, whatever. I just couldn't remember what it was off the top of my head because I never order it. And then I also got traditional Domino's style pizza with I believe it was ham and bacon
You know what's good
or
on
pepperoni
one
and
of them?
bacon. Excuse me.
You know what's good on one of them thin crust pizzas?
What?
And this is the Mark's recommendation.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Pepperoni, pineapple, onions, sausage, green peppers, black olives, and cheddar cheese. And then
I
sprinkle some Frank's Red Hot sauce on top of it.
I am not a fan of olives, so I would probably call them off. I would be willing to try the rest of the things on there. It doesn't sound like it would be gross. But I
It's
probably
delicious.
I may not like that particular.
Well, if you don't like it, tell us in the comments. God, this is gonna be the thing we get the most comments
Yes,
about ever.
you said pineapple somewhere in there, right?
Oh yeah, no, that's gonna make people
No,
mad.
you ruined it because there's it's like AEW versus WWE, pineapple on versus pineapple not on pizza.
Uh-huh. Pineapple on pizza. Clap, 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 clap.
Yeah, we hate pineapple.
Speaking of the AEW,
Yeah, speaking of, they had their show, and the aforementioned Jack Swagger was featured prominently in a segment where Chris Jericho formed his own stable.
I heard about this. They're called the Inner Circle, right?
Mm-hmm. The inner
Okay.
circle, all of his best friends in the world.
Are they really his best friends in
No,
the world?
no.
No.
Um, he barely knows any of them. Let's see.
But
So,
because they're in his stable, they're now his best
correct,
friends.
yes.
That's a
They
very
are his inner
Jericho thing,
circle, his
yes.
most trusted confidants and friends. It's made up of Sammy Guevara, Santana and Ortiz, the previous FKA, um, LAX, and Jake Hager, aka the baddest MMA fighter ever, as in like the most coolest, awesomest one.
Is Luchasaurus in the stable?
No, Luchasaurus is in his own stable. There's a three-man stable.
Oh yeah,
Marco,
they're all
that yeah,
dinosaurs or whatever.
no. Well, the one of them's Jungle Boy. The other one's Marco Stunt, who is like 5 foot nothing or less, might be. And then there's Luchasaurus, who's
Okay.
the dinosaur
Yeah, no,
that
no. Okay, well,
fights,
wherever Luchasaurus is, I'm all about that.
fighting lizard.
Yes. Okay.
Um, so yeah, and then I mean, this group is pretty much in directly opposed to what is essentially the elite, which is
Okay.
Cody Rhodes, the Young Bucks, um, Hangman Page, and Dustin Rhodes. Traditionally, what's his face with the wild hair?
Don't
Yada
get me
yada
lying.
yada. Oh, Kenny Omega.
Okay.
Kenny Omega is traditionally part of the elite, but he's kind of in his own feud right now with Pac and the former Dean Ambrose, John Moxley. So he's kind of outside of this right now.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're building up stables, and those two will be going head to head, and they've already built. You know how we talked about how it's cool because you can start to mix and match people from the stable. Oh, Dustin Rhodes is taking the place of Kenny Omega, so Dustin Rhodes is in the elite stable right now.
Doki doki.
Um, so
So that was our AEW minute.
that was our AEW minute, and we'll probably talk. We want to talk a little bit more about um the whole stable, how it's gonna work. Let's see if they have the Oh, there was one other thing that came out of AEW. Darby Allin
Hmm.
beat Jimmy Havoc to become the number one contender, and the
The number
coolest
one contender for.
for the AEW championship.
Okay. The one
There's no
Jericho
yes,
has and lost and recovered and
yep,
has again.
yeah, and that's like next week. They'll be fighting over that. Darby Allin at the end of the big scrum between the Inner Circle and the Elite skateboarded down the ramp and did like a flying knee or something to Chris Jericho at
Lovely.
approximately the end of the show. So a lot of people were like, "Ah, that's super cool," and it was. So, yeah, that's So the cool thing is next week's show is a lot of Inner Circle versus Elite matchups. So you're kind of seeing where the breakdown is in terms of like they're like Dustin Rhodes is fighting like Sammy Guevara or something like that. You're kind of seeing where people stand in the stables, and you can get extra mileage out of it because then next week Dustin Rhodes will fight one of the members of LAX or something like that in a tag team match with somebody else. You know, that's what we thought worked best in the Attitude Era, and it'll be interesting to see if it still works when AEW does it.
Yep. It's why we're such a big fan of stables here at the Mark and Smart Connection podcast.
Mm-hmm. You know what didn't work that might have worked in the past was the ending to Hell in a Cell.
Okay, so time to complain. But before we do, I want to preface this by saying that the Hell in a Cell preview or the Hell in a Cell event was fine for the
Hell
most
was
part.
actually pretty good.
Yeah, yeah.
All the women's matches were very good.
Oh yeah, and that
All
Sasha
the
Banks
yeah
and Becky Lynch match at the very beginning was super duper.
the filler matches were fine.
Yeah,
They added a couple of matches that were fine, but not great. And then they ended with this, and
yeah.
as
That
anyone who's ever played Mass Effect 3 knows, you can ruin a lot with the ending.
yeah. And I've thought about it, but there were a number of things that came together to piss everybody off. The ring, well, the Hell in a Cell was itself red, which is okay.
Mm-hmm.
When the
That
match
was
started, they turned
carryover
on
from
these
last
red
year.
lights, and that annoyed some people.
Mm-hmm.
I know you thought it was avant-garde, but
I thought yeah. I mean, it went with the whole presentation of the Fiend that they've been trying to do.
I wouldn't have minded it if it wasn't so blaringly red.
Mm-hmm.
And there were people who were in attendance that were complaining they really couldn't see anything.
That was my only issue was I figured the live crowd just couldn't see shit.
Yeah, and that
It was
I mean
great for us watching on TV in my estimation, but yeah.
yeah, but they're seeing a bunch of red, and that starts
So
to
all they can do is look at the monitor, the screen, and I'm not even sure they had the screen on because they
yeah.
wanted all the red light.
Yeah, and then the match starts, and at some point, the Fiend sort of just lies down and gets the shit beat out of him for like forever,
Mm-hmm.
which is okay, right? I mean, there needs to be some offense from Seth Rollins, and he's trying to tell some story about going to some dark place or whatever.
Yeah.
Start piling crap on the Fiend and just dropping stuff on him, and at some point you're like, all right, Fiend, do something. You should be stronger than this. And they had him sell the stomp. Like Seth Rollins stomped him like 20 times.
Yeah, and he pretty much no-sold all the moves, like he couldn't be beat. And then he just kept having to beat him down, and he did hit him with the foreign objects for a little bit, and then kicked out of some of that, but they continued to pile on.
It was annoying people because even though they were kicking out what's happening, they feel like they threw like too many stomps at him, and then at some point the Fiend just sort of lay there while Seth Rollins pounded him with everything he could find out of the ring. And then, and this is probably the straw that broke the camel's back, probably the greatest sin of the entire match. The referee was like, "No, you're gonna kill this man, Seth." And then he called like a disqualification or a no contest, or he stopped the match.
Yeah, it was a referee stoppage.
Yeah,
so it was a no contest. It wasn't a disqualification. There's no disqualifications in Hell in a Cell.
Baloney.
But we didn't hear about it until we didn't get further clarification of it until after the event.
Yeah, you can call it whatever you want. He started doing that after Seth hit him with the hammer, and that looked, smelled, and tasted like a disqualification in that moment. And that really made everybody mad. And that was itself a giant sin. And then on top of all of this is The Fiend was super over. He'd been built up to be the scary thing. He's been mowing people down, and we all know Bray Wyatt, you know, had this habit of showing up on the big stage back when he was the Eater of Worlds, and then he would just eat a pin, and people would be like, "Oh, well, he's nothing." They
Hmm.
wouldn't care. And so now you had him lying in the middle of the ring for 30 minutes, getting beaten up by everything they could find under the ring, and then there's a disqualification to save the Fiend. And so that's what had a lot of people howling on top of all of that. And so
Right.
people started chanting AEW and restart the match and all that other good shit they do whenever they're mad. And and then the Fiend like sprang up from the paramedics after they put him on a board, and he started, mandible clawing Seth Rollins. Seth Rollins was spurting blood, but nobody was paying attention at that point. Everybody was like, whatever.
Everybody had already blown their top and freaked out about it and canceled their
Yeah.
WWE subscription
Yeah.
and said that the Fiend was dead and buried and who would never be valid as a character again. This is all, yeah, after that happened. Yeah, the Fiend popped back up after all that.
Yeah, I don't believe that's going to be the case, but I
But
can see why.
if you saw Twitter,
Oh, well, I mean, you know, people were burning their hurt and heel gloves and throwing themselves on their swords and shit like that.
yeah,
And I know we often on this show we try to take a more positive note about things. We try to be reasonable. We try to
hmm
look at why something happened. And in my opinion, the reason this happened is they didn't want to put the title on the Fiend, but they booked him in this no DQ Hell in a Cell match with the championship and a title match.
hmm
So, and I had mentioned in another podcast, I was like, they don't want to put that on the Fiend. It doesn't make sense to put it on the Fiend. What are they going to do? And
yeah.
I remember, I think I had suggested he was going to DQ, and you said you can't DQ in a Hell in a Cell. And I was like, oh well, okay then.
Well,
So
they wanted to make both people look strong, and they figured that was the best way to do it, was to make Seth have to like challenge himself to go into a dark place, and then go ahead and do what he had to do to take the Fiend out, but
yeah,
then not have the Fiend actually lose. I mean, what they could have done is they could have had some sort of thing happen where the cage failed or something like that, and a section opened up and Seth like escaped, but then
yeah,
that Seth looks like a pussy.
yeah. And they didn't want the audience itself. Actually, I feel did not want the Fiend to sort of like lose or be spared by some kind of fate or
Right.
circumstance or some sort of serendipity or anything like that. They
The
wanted
the
the Fiend.
point the point of the thing was, if you're gonna put the Fiend in that match, you should put the title on the Fiend.
Yeah,
He's
and they
got to
didn't.
win the match. If they had made it a non-title match, beforehand, maybe people would bitch about it, but they probably wouldn't hashtag cancel at WWE Network.
Yeah, and as long as because if they'd done that, then the Fiend would have won.
Yes.
It would have been a stronger match where he like stomped all over Seth Rollins,
Hmm.
literally.
Right.
So
So they could have done a much better job with it. I think the job that they did, I think the story that they told, I think the presentation was all very good, especially for a TV audience. Maybe not for the
I'm gonna
people at
disagree
home.
about the presentation. I think the red light was it annoyed me.
Yeah. I mean, I thought it was good. I thought it harkened back to the final deletion, like that style, that kind of idea, and the kind of idea that you would get from the old Undertaker coming out with all the steam and the dry ice as he comes out over a graveyard plot for the Buried Alive match.
Yeah,
You would
but
get
that
that
happens
feeling.
before the match, and when the match happens, they turn up the goddamn lights, and you can see what's happening.
Right. They were trying to make it so there's a universe that exists around the Fiend.
Yeah, and I think that also rubbed people the wrong way for two reasons. One, it was a red light, it was annoying.
Mm-hmm.
Two, they couldn't see it
Yep.
in the live venue. And three, I know I said two reasons, but here's the third one. It stank of like the special effects that they used during the House of Horrors match, where they had like worms appearing in the center of the ring and all this other
Well,
stuff.
that wasn't the House of Horrors match. That was the actual WrestleMania thing. But yeah, I get what you're saying. This was actually done well. That wasn't done well. This was actually done like decently. The red. You're right. The red made it a little tough to see for us, and I can imagine. I thought at the moment that I was watching it, that I was like, this must be impossible to watch for people in the stadium. And
Yeah,
I get all that. But if you watched, say, the Fiend's appearance on SmackDown, um, they did special lighting. You could actually see the guy who had the the spotlight in the front row at one point. But they did special lighting to make it look creepier and to like establish the Fiend's domain, and I think that's important.
Yeah, I'm not against that. I just don't think I will argue that it wasn't executed well in this circumstance, and it was not the biggest sin of the match.
What if, as Seth is beating the Fiend with weapons and stuff, the light gradually returns? What if that had happened? What if they had done that? And then after it was called and, all the lights come all the way back up and the Fiend is down there, getting looked over. What if then it all went like full red darkness as he mandible clawed Seth? How about that?
I mean, that's okay, I suppose.
I think
I'd have
that would have been awesome.
Yeah, I'd have to see it, but I do think that wrestlers in general, they're fine with fancy lights during an entrance and an exit, and during like moments where, say, the Undertaker appears or the Fiend appears.
Mm-hmm.
But if there's like a match going on and they want to see the wrestling between the wrestlers,
Okay. I'm not sure that. Well, yeah, I get exactly what you're saying. And in a flippy match between 205 Live guys, you want to see every single thing. In this match, which was more of a performance and less of like an athletic,
Mm-hmm.
I think you can kind of fudge that. I think you can do something like this, and that's my
I
personal opinion. So we're
Well,
going to
I
disagree on
agree
this
with you in
particular one.
principle.
Yeah.
I think in the Hell in a Cell match, their attempt at it fell flat. Um, and like I said, it still wasn't the biggest sin of the match unless you were in the live audience and couldn't
Well,
see
yeah,
shit.
yeah.
So
I
it was
think we
just
can
one of
agree.
the things that started nettling people.
I think we
So
can agree that it wasn't for everyone, and I can totally understand why you wouldn't be excited about it.
well, no, I'm
Or
a big Bray Wyatt mark, and
right.
whenever I saw that, I'm not gonna call it a train wreck, but whenever I saw that stuff, that bullshit, I was like, come on, come on, come on, no. And then I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't throwing my WWE subscription out the window, but
Now you're
I did
referring to
finish.
the end of the match, not necessarily the whole match, or was
No, well,
is the redness part of the bullshit?
like I said, it was nettling, but it wasn't,
That
you
wasn't
know.
bullshit. That was like, okay, fine, I get it. I don't like it, but I get it.
Yeah, no, I got over that.
Uh huh.
The thing that bothered me the most was the disqualification, which they called a ref stoppage, but at the time it was a DQ.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had the other thing that bothered me was the Fiend just laying there eating shit. I was like, get up and do something, you know?
Well, I mean, it's the horror movie trope where you kill the bad guy and then he
Hmm.
gets back up. That's what they were trying to build. Is basically Seth Rollins killing the Fiend, like dropping the goddamn piano on him, and then
Yeah,
him getting up after like through the rubble of the piano. They
yeah,
didn't have a rubble of a piano to put him through, so they put him under 100 chairs.
and I would not have minded that. But then there was the ref stoppage, and he
Right.
still laid on the ground even after that. And despite all of this, like horror show effect stuff, if he was able to get up whenever he wanted to, why did he sit there? I mean, and allow a ref stoppage and just lie there?
That is what I think rankled the people the most is that we had on Sunday Hell in a Cell,
Hmm.
and we had no Fiend. I don't even think Seth Rollins was on Raw the next night.
Oh no, yeah, they.
Nothing was said about it. They, I think, mentioned that the event had happened the weekend, but the Hell in a Cell match wasn't even brought up.
Well,
That pissed people off even further. And if we had a Firefly Funhouse the next night where we talk about Bray Wyatt, where the championship would have been fine, but the real goal was to get Seth Rollins closer to being his friend, to get Seth Rollins to a place where he could join the Firefly Funhouse, to get Seth Rollins into a state of mind that Seth Rollins didn't want to be in. If we had an episode like that, I think a lot of people probably would have went, okay, I still don't like it, but at least I kind of get where they were going at it.
yeah, but
But
instead,
instead, we got nothing until SmackDown, where the Fiend just came out of the ring and it was really awesome looking, but it didn't really tell any more story. It didn't really it didn't really make more sense of what happened on Sunday.
yep. And to be honest, I think we're at a point as well where people don't really want to see Seth Rollins struggling with becoming evil or not.
Mm.
So,
So here's how I pose the potential setup in during the tweets during my draft. So Kofi loses to Brock because
Mm-hmm.
they want to move the WWE title to Raw,
Mm-hmm.
which sends Seth Rollins to uh, to SmackDown. So we get to continue. The Fiend was brought to SmackDown, so we get to maybe continue that, or we allow Kofi to take the title from Seth Rollins, and then have Kofi fight the Fiend, and see where that goes.
Oh, Jesus. That'd
I
be a that'd be a that'd be a head-on collision of two over superstars.
Yes, and I think people would be they'd be have mixed feelings about it. They'd be excited about it, and I think that would be a great story. And who knows, that might actually be what they're trying to do. So you know at that point makes it have a little more sense all the things that happen. People were also bitching this week about the fact that it was basically like, oh, nobody cares that Kofi lost last week to Brock. Like he's not still sad and mopey. He's out there throwing pancakes. I mean, to that I said the power of positivity. And Graves did mention it. Yeah, just last week, Kofi Kingston was the champion. But I think people just want more out of the Kofi championship still. But yeah, that bitching is a
Well,
little further for me than I want it to
we'll
be.
see
Yeah.
if Vince is listening, as we know he is,
Yep.
and we can watch next Friday to see if he takes our advice yet again.
Well, we got to make it. We got to get through Crown Jewel first.
Yeah, Crown Jewel.
Brock
Okay,
Brock
so
Lesnar still needs to have the title in Crown Jewel, and Seth Rollins probably still needs to have the title in Crown Jewel so that they can sell some more tickets.
yep, Crown Jewel. Don't care about Crown Jewel.
Nobody does except
Nope.
the people paying $100 billion or whatever over
Yeah.
10 years.
I mean, I'm sure there are Saudi wrestling fans, and this is a fantastic opportunity for them, and I
Oh,
don't
there's
begrudge them a thing.
that. I think it's
But
like 100,000 person stadium that they fill up.
yeah, holy crap.
Yeah. So there's a huge market for people who don't get to see The Undertaker versus Goldberg, who don't get to see Brock Lesnar
Yeah,
or wrestle on like actual live in real life.
we've
So
mentioned this before,
yeah, so
and
we're not gonna go down that road. It's
yeah,
great.
and
It's great for the people in Saudi Arabia that they have this opportunity for
I
their
should
entertainment.
I should point
We
out
don't
that
care though.
there are people who um, have sort of ethical objections to having a show in Saudi Arabia.
Hmm.
Sami Zayn, to point out a wrestler that has an objection. The fact that the women can't wrestle is another objection. Also, the death, slaying, killing, murder of Jamal Khashoggi, the journalist, which that they pretty
Right.
much everybody has agreed they could pin that on the Saudi prince. So, I mean, there's many reasons not to like the show. We tend to not get into that on the program,
No,
but I will say,
our reasons for not liking the show this time is that the matches aren't interesting.
yeah,
And
and
the same
also
thing. It was the same thing with the last time too. The matches just weren't interesting to us.
yeah,
Like
and it exists out.
that's the simple truth of that. We don't even need to get into the other things. Where you start as, do I care about the matches? Okay. Do I care enough about the matches where I will uphold you know, my moral stance, and then from there you go forward. But the other thing is, it's also on Halloween at 3 o'clock on Halloween, so I'm not watching that.
Yeah, no, hell, I'll be trick or treating.
Yeah, yeah,
Wait,
yeah.
at 3 o'clock? No, that's too early.
That is too early. You'll be getting ready for trick or treaters at that point.
All I gotta do is put on my Ghostbusters outfit. It's
Uh,
easy to do.
my favorite trick or treating outfit was as a pizza delivery guy. So I wore my New York Rangers jacket, which was blue and red, which are the Domino's colors.
Uh-huh.
And I'd walk up with a pizza box to people's houses and ring the doorbell, and they'd be like, "What?" And then I'd open the pizza box and be like, "Trick or treat," and they'd put candy in there.
Wonderful.
It was a great troll. It was wonderful. And
Well, what
yeah.
I like to do is I have some friends who live nearby. I go to their house dressed up, something covering my face, and since I'm short, sometimes they mistake me for like a child, and they'll answer the door, and I'll be like, "Trick or treat, motherfuckers," and they'll say, well, "Young man," and then they'll realize it's me. And they'll go, "Oh, god damn it, hi Matt."
Yeah. You're a shorty, Gable.
Speaking of which, this sounds like a good time for a hot tag, hot take.
Yeah, so the hot take is how we close out the show every episode now. It's we basically have a little time to say what we want about the wrestling world at large, be it something in the ring, something outside of the ring, something tangentially related to a ring, uh, anything like that. Whatever wrestler is in the newest movie, that we get to see, like John Cena in a new Suicide movie. Woo! Suicide Squad movie.
Okay.
So in this case, we get to just pop in whenever we want and say hot tag, hot take, and no one can interrupt us.
So I'm gonna do that. I will start with the hot tag, hot take. Um, Originally I was gonna talk about all of the hubbub with the Houston Rockets and China, but you can go look that up on the internet and be mad about it if you want. Instead, I'm gonna say yay to the Houston Astros. They have made it to the ALCS, the American League Championship Series against the Yankees. I'm sure they're going to win. The reason I cheer for them is not just because I live in Houston, but because Josh Reddick, a wrestling fan to the bone, plays for the Astros. I've mentioned him a million times on this show. I'd like to see him win again. I'd like to see him hoist another championship.
Hot tag, hot take. See, that's how you're supposed to do it. You're supposed to jump in and just hit that. So that's actually an interesting question because next Friday, the ALCS game is scheduled to be played on Fox during the during the SmackDown block. So I still haven't heard anything about what. Obviously, the baseball is going to happen, but I haven't heard anything about what SmackDown is going to do. So that's the keep an ear out to the ground for that. Me, I'm talking about a new show, another show that debuted this week, NWA Power. So I know Matt has watched the Southpaw Regional Wrestling
Hmm.
and how it's kind of a parody on the studio shows. Well, NWA is bringing back studio shows, and they're doing it all in the old studio show style. So the wrestler comes up, he does an interview, then he walks immediately into the ring, has a match, or he has his match and walks back, and while he's all sweaty, he has his interview, and it's all done in one room. And it's, if you watched and enjoyed Southpaw Regional Wrestling, but you wished it was more actual wrestling, so far you're kind of getting that vibe. It is serious. It's not generally funny, but it feels old school. It feels nostalgic, and it feels interesting. So far, I enjoyed the very first episode. The storyline of Tim Storm, the 50-year-old high school teacher who became the NWA champion and stewarded the title in the dark days right before Billy Corgan bought the whole company. He had his final match for the NWA title this week, this week's show, against Aldis. I forgot his first name now. Nick Aldis.
Dumbledore.
No, Nick Aldis.
Oh, it sounded like you
Um,
said Albus.
no, that's Dumbledore's first name, not the other way around. But no, Nick Aldis. And it was a great match. It had all the feels. And if you've watched any of the 10 Pounds of Gold documentary series that they've done, they actually put a big chunk of that in the promo packages, so you didn't really need to watch it. But if you did, you get all the real feels for that. So I'd suggest watching it. It's only they're trying to make it only an hour long, so it's not a huge pull on your time as opposed to 5 hours of WWE plus NXT's 2 hours, or even just 2 hours of AEW. And it's all on demand on the NWA YouTube channel. So I suggest checking that out. Matthias, do you have anything else?
Yes. So at the end of each show, we have a finishing move. It's a finishing move I come up with based upon the topics of the day. I went through a couple of ideas, but I've landed on one that's really stupid. Are you ready, Jesse?
Yep, go for it.
Yep. I call this one Seeing Red. You distract the ref, then you poke your opponent in the eyes. After that, you clothesline him and he falls down, then you cover him. Ding, 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 ding.
Yay! And then his eyes
Yay.
will be all
But
bloodshot because you poked him in
yeah,
the eye.
but the downside of this is if the ref sees you, it results in a disqualification no matter what match you're in.
Or a referee.
Hell in a Cell, Boiler Room Brawl, Hardcore match, doesn't matter.
Buried alive.
Buried alive.
Inferno match.
And the blind match where you have a bag over your head,
Yes.
especially.
Especially. That would be especially hard to pull off in that. But you know what? We do it anyway, and we do it with style. And we'd wander our way with the blindfold still over our faces back eventually to the back room. And even with the blindfolds over our faces, we could enjoy the Mark and Smart Connection podcast because it's all audio, baby. And you can hear that audio on markandsmark.podbean.com, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play Music, YouTube, Facebook.com/MarkandSmark, at Mark and Smark on Twitter and Instagram, and the Daily Smark website, thedailysmark.com/podcast/the-Mark and Smark. There's a little big line. Just go to the Daily Smark and find us. We'll be up there every weekend, Saturday night, Sunday morning. We'll be up there ready for you to consume. And with that, for Matt Cooper, the Mark, this is Jesse Disbro signing off. We will see you next time.